Hello, everyone. On October 9th, in the small hours in London, the Mars Pluto Cardinal square, which has been kind of looming above us for quite a few days, is going to be exact. And this gives me occasion to do a little philosophizing about power and will and exercising the will. In Hungarian, power and violence stem from the same root. In Hungarian, it's erő and erőszak, but they are not synonyms. And in English, luckily, they are not even similar in sounding. If you have power, if you are able to self-assert yourself, if you know how to exercise your will, then you are powerful. And being powerful doesn't mean that you are actually abusing your power. When you use violence, that is making you violent and aggressive. Although that's funny because one of my very good friends, actually he's my best friend, Jim, who lives in the United States. I remember 30 years ago, we were discussing cars, and he was driving a BMW at that point, and I told him that I don't really like BMWs because I find them aggressive. And he looked at me and he goes, "Why? I mean, there's nothing wrong in being aggressive." And we discussed this. I still remember how I was trying to make a point that people who don't really have the money to buy a regular nice sports car, in Hungary at least, they buy a second-hand BMW, and then they drive in a very reckless and violent way. That's what I was driving at. But that made me think. And if I look at my own personal actions, I can distinguish when I exercise my will and when and usually when I'm not able to, that is when I become, if not violent, maybe aggressive in a negative way. So let's take a look at the charts, and I stop philosophizing, and I will not bore you with my own little stories. So here's the Mars Pluto Cardinal square, and as I said, this is typically the energy pattern of violence, and it becomes exact on October 9th at 1:46 a.m. But it has been there for quite a few days, and I'm actually recording this a few days earlier. And this morning, I just heard that in the United States, Kevin McCarthy was ousted as House Speaker. And who did it? All the Democrats and the 10 so-called MAGA Republican DOJ senator, not DOJ, whatever. So the Republican Party. And all I can tell, it's like a farce. When you could win, when you could have the best potential to prove the country that you know what you want and you are for the people and you are going to make people's lives much easier and not ruin them like the Democrats have been doing in the last 3 years. Then all of a sudden you boo-boo and you're ruining your chance to rule. And this makes me think that to become a politician, you only need two things, really. You need some verbal abilities, obviously, and you need to be completely reckless and without any shame and without any principles. Because what I suspect happened, simply because that's what I think, they were bought. It's ridiculous, but whatever. It's nothing. I'm not going to meddle into American politics because it doesn't really matter. There's no such thing anymore as left side and right side of the angle. They are the same. They are the same warmongering, cheating, lying idiots. Anyhow, if you look at this chart, there are a number of features which we already treated a couple of times. I'm not going to talk to you about the Aries North Node conjunction because I told it a zillion times, and also the Vesta Austria. If you're here and you hear, just go back to any of my recent videos, and I will give you a detailed explanation what they mean. But you can see that Mars, which is twice as fast as Lilith, now separates itself. It's separating from the conjunction. And actually, a couple of days ago, it was the Mars South Node conjunction, which is interesting because Mars is in detriment in Libra, And the Libra South Node denotes a behavior pattern that we are bringing in from the past. And it means that, yes, we are not going to fight, we are going to talk. It's like peace talks and negotiations. And Lilith is revolt against injustice. There are 3 Liliths, all of which are prominent in this chart, not as prominent as in the Budapest chart, because I'm always doing this in Hungarian, and this time, because it is an exact time of the Mars-Pluto square, you have an ascendant and you have a midheaven. And in the Budapest chart, the ascendant is at 29 degrees Leo, so this traffic jam is right around the ascendant. So if you want to see that chart, you can take a look at the Magyar version. Anyhow, so that is a separating conjunction, and now Lilith is applying the South Node. This Lilith, which is the first turning point of the Lilith myth, denotes revolt against injustice. And Dark Moon Lilith, which is the acceptance of the curse, this is the second turning point of the Lilith myth. Dark Moon is opposite this traffic jam. So there's 4 strong women. I'm going to come to this, but that's what you see here. And then especially it is exactly opposite Juno, the first lady. And there are also 2 midpoint structures which are going to look in detail. But let's take a look at these strong feminine. In the London chart, by the way, the moon is rising exactly. So you can see the moon at that point. You can see the moon, which is of course coming to it's not yet balsamic. It is at the end of last quarter, and the 4 strong feminine, Juno, the first lady, the queen of heavens, the mother of gods, Venus, who is at 29 degrees 59 seconds Leo, so it's ready to move into Virgo, but it's still very, very powerful, is of course love and money. Black Moon Lilith, which is the 3rd turning point of the Lilith myth, represents the will and stamina to enter the Garden of Eden, from which she previously went away and was actually later on banished, and go back there to rectify the fact that Eve, the second wife, doesn't have a soul. And Alma in Hungarian means apple, but in Latin means soul. So the apple of the Garden of Eden story is actually the rectification of the lack of soul in the second wife. Interestingly enough, if we look at the energy pattern of violence, and we further philosophize a little bit about exercising the will and doing something in a violent way, how they are really not synonyms. You can see that in the Lilith myth, because Lilith is just powerful and she exercises her will at any turning point, really. Just by saying that I don't want to be below you, she's exercising her will against Yahweh. When she leaves the Garden of Eden and actually utters Yahweh's unutterable name, again, she's exercising her will. She is powerful, and she knows how to self-assert her. And when she goes back, then again, she acts it on her own volition, or that's an act of self-assertion as well, without any violence. So Lilith could be the counterpart of Mars in this point of viewpoint. Okay. Let's take a look at the karmic trapeze that is forming okay, sorry about that. I just want to, okay, there's I'm recording this via Zoom, and there's this band of Zoom icons which I can't make it disappear. Sometimes they disappear by themselves, and sometimes they don't. So that's why I'm fumbling with my computer. Anyhow, so here's the karmic trapeze. The reason it is karmic is because both the base and the inner structure are made of quincunxes. A trapeze is always a vehicle of stepping on and giving what's in you, so to speak. When I want to teach something, when I have a say, when I want to spread wisdom or just knowledge, or simply, just like the soapbox speakers in Hyde Park, I just want to step on something and tell you what I think. That's a trapeze. So it's a stage, really. And in this case, the stage, the base of the stage is karma, the karmic energy. Juno and Neptune are there. Juno is, besides being the first lady, also pacts and covenants and agreements. And Neptune is, of course, the smoke screen energy. So it means that something is hidden, which we don't see, and instead we are shown something else. The inner energy is also two quincunxes. Juno Pluto is about these pacts that are done by the powers that be, by the invisible powers. And Mars Neptune is about I call it the Don Quixote aspect, or the Grail Knight aspect. This is a quincunx. So again, we are fighting for a cause that is not actually as is. It's something else. The smoke screen energy is very powerful. And the top of this stage is the Mars Pluto square. So this violent energy up there. As I said, again, I am recording this a couple of days earlier, so I don't know what will happen during those 3-4 days, but we need to watch the news, because with Mars Pluto, which is happening every year, there's always violence erupting when there's a Mars Pluto square, with conjunctions as well sometimes. So the hard aspects, conjunctions, oppositions, and squares usually bring some sort of violence in the world. That there's a war going on, so that's plenty of violence already. So let's take a look at the transcendental celestial objects here. You have plenty of asteroids, and just the two centaurs, Orius and Amicus, which have been there for ages and will travel with Pluto for quite some time. With Pluto, you also have Dionysus, altered states of consciousness. On Neptune, you have Archimedes and Pandora. Archimedes, we link the concept of eureka, when I realized something, and I'm very happy all of a sudden, this flash of inspiration. And Pandora is the jar which contains all of the hardships of mankind, which Pandora conveniently lets out, and we received it. And this, to me, means that something that has been hidden will be revealed and will cause a lot of suffering, probably, or we will get an answer to a lot of suffering through some kind of revelation, Archimedes. On Mars, you have Selene, the Luna, the moon goddess, which means that those 4 strong feminine that we saw in a bunch around the end of Leo, very beginning of Virgo, because the black moon is already in Virgo, and Venus is ready to step into Virgo in like a couple of minutes. So that Mars is also kind of making an impact with Selene, the moon goddess. And the moon goddess governs the family, the home life, your homeland. So that is actually the karmic layer of this. And here's another it looks like another stage, another trapeze. But I included the ascendant descendant because we have a couple of minor aspects as well. This is a dissociate planetary picture. It is dissociate because if you take a look at the degrees and the signs here, so it's either things are either at the end of the signs or the very beginning of the signs. As you see, Black Moon Lilith is at Virgo 0 degrees 37, and of course Saturn is still retrograding. It's a very slow moving object. It is retrograding in Gemini still, but it's soon, not very soon, but it will move back into Taurus for a while, and then it will have another trine with Pluto still in the Earth signs. And as you can see here, we have these are two engines. Engines are made by squares, trines, and quincunxes. So 3 different aspects belonging to different aspect families. And usually we can tell just by looking at the square and the trine what sort of engine it is. For instance, if the square is in a cardinal like this here, we have a cardinal square, we could see that this is a cardinal, but we can't add what sort of trine it is, because Pluto is still in Capricorn and Sedna is already still in Gemini. So this trine is 150 degrees. So again, we can't. This is a dissociate square or dissociate engine, and in this portion we do have a mutable square between Black Moon and Sedna, but with Venus, it is out of sign. So the Venus-Sedna square is really a sextile. So that's why, well, we could say that, yeah, this particular square is okay, but again, the trine is not happening. The trine is not there. So that's why I didn't put in engines. But if you take a look at the London, this is a London ascendant, which is at 17 degrees Leo Aquarius, then we will have a biseptile from Sedna. Biseptiles are about mysticism, actually mysticism that is more graspable and understandable. So we can rearrange our covenants with others or our partnerships with others. There's also a tridecile between Mars and the descendant. So there should be some altered states of consciousness by which we understand who and with whom we are fighting and against whom we are fighting. And there's also a quindecile, 165 degrees between Venus and actually, this is between Venus and descendant. And this is the, so it's very interesting that these minor aspects are all joining the descendant of the London chart. And the quindecile is about aggression or ambition or obsession. So it could be anything. It will be interesting to see what is happening in London during this period. Here are the transcendental celestial objects. You have, again, Mars Somnus and the Pleiades with Sedna. I'm not going to tell you 100,000 times. I did already. On the London ascendant, you have Cleopatra and Horemheb, two Egyptian figures. Cleopatra is a queen, of course, and Horemheb was a slave who was elevated as general during Tutankhamun's reign, and then after his death, he himself became the pharaoh. So it is this elevation energy is there. And on the descendant as Laocoon, who was the creator, who was the one who in the Trojan War said that don't bring the horse in because we are going to suffer. And yes, they of course did. So it's and he was punished because the sea god Poseidon killed him with his three sons. On Pluto, you have still Amicus and Orius. I'm not going to delineate it. I did it 100 times, but you have also Dionysus, another altered states of consciousness energy. And on Sila Nunam, you have Regulus. On Venus Lilith, you have Sila Nunam and Regulus. And Sila Nunam is a fascinating TNO. It's a binary object where Nunam is the moon and Sila is the main object, but they're almost equal by size. So it's a true binary. And Sila is a sky god. He represents energies that are celestial, and then Nunam rules the earth and the rocks and everything solid. And Sila Nunam is in karmic astrology is a TNO that represents bifurcation points in life. What are bifurcation points? I'm sure you had a couple of ones already. If you are old enough, it means that there are certain events in your life where you absolutely know that your decision will determine your future. So when you decide, for instance, to leave your country and go to another country, when you decide to get married, when you decide to abort a child, when you decide to leave a play or a workplace, these are the ones which determine our lives. And Sila Nunam represents a space-time moment when we have to make decisions which are going to affect the future in a big way. And the Venus black moon has synonyms at the moment, but also Regulus. And Regulus, which is Alpha Leo, is the seat or the place where real kings, real rulers are being taught, and where you learn how to rule, where you learn sovereignty. At the same time, Sedna is at the moment on the Pleiades and will be there for another year at least. So Sedna is not moving anywhere. So at least 1 or 2 years it will be aligned with the Pleiades. And the Pleiades is the seed for the goddess, for the creator goddess. So you have two very strong power energies here in this particular chart with this dissociate aspect configuration. And as I promised, there are some midpoint structures. First of all, the fact that Uranus is still at the midpoint of Sedna and Jupiter is fascinating, because Jupiter has an orbital period of 12 years, whereas Sedna has a 12,000 years orbital period. Imagine, it means that on average it should be in one sign for 1,000 years. So it's like and now at this moment the 3 celestial objects are retrograding and are almost retrograding at the same pace. So that's why Uranus is still at the Sedna Jupiter midpoint. And as I explained it many times, Jupiter enlarges everything it touches, and Sedna rearranges stuff that is not working. And Uranus, which also means chaos and anarchy, is simply also the vehicle of change. And you may remember about a week ago when we looked at the Aries full moon, and there the question was whether this is the full moon of chaos or wisdom, because both Uranus and Pallas Athena were very prominent in that chart. And here, interesting enough, their midpoint structures becoming relevant, because in their midpoint structures, the 2 luminaries are present. In the Uranus midpoint structure, you have Jupiter and Sedna on the one hand, and then Moon and Saturn on the other. And Moon Saturn could be described, any Moon Saturn aspect could be described either as spiritual stamina or strong and serious emotions, a strong mother figure, but also depression. So many people who have stressful Saturn Moon aspects are prone to some sort of bad moods or things like that. Anyhow, if you look at, but I was digressing in my mind, because it's important for you to understand that midpoint structures are always positive. So we are not going to delineate anything in a negative way. So we don't use the word depression here. We use a strong soul instead. And what is also very important, that we deal with midpoint structures only in case the 3 planets are not in aspect configurations. Otherwise, it's an aspect, it's a configuration. And if there are no aspects between the 3, that is when we say that is when the midpoint structure comes into place, or starts to play. And here we don't, because Sedna, Uranus, and Jupiter are not conjunct. I mean, they are like 7-8 degrees apart, so there's no conjunction here. And if you can take a look, the Moon and Saturn are also not in an aspect relationships. Yes, they make aspects. So there is some aspects present, but not in the midpoint structure, because here you have Saturn Sedna square, which is actually a mutable square, and you have a Jupiter Moon fixed square, but it's not affecting Uranus, because it's not, Uranus is not making any aspects with these. There's also 2 quintiles. Quintiles denote ingeniousness, and the Moon Sedna quintile shows us gives us some highlights, what to take apart and how to rectify it. And the Jupiter Saturn quintile gives us balance, how to make an ingenious balance in our lives. Okay, so that is one midpoint structure. And then the wisdom, Pallas Athena, also has a midpoint structure where another luminary, the sun, is present. first of all, Pallas Athena in Libra denotes wisdom through negotiations and cerebral processes. So it's a very wise and calm energy. And then Mercury and the Sun, which are also in Libra, add to the picture. You could argue that this is a conjunction, yes, because it's only like four degrees. So this could actually be interpreted as a triple conjunction, but it's still a perfect midpoint structure. And also, Pallas Athena is, this is not it, sorry about this, Saturn. See, this is on the Budapest chart. I apologize. Again, I did this in installments, and sometimes I'm making mistakes. Anyhow, so Pallas Athena is also at the midpoint of Uranus and Saturn, and Uranus and Saturn have no aspects. This is just the midpoint line for you to see that, yes, this is a perfect midpoint, which is perpendicular to the opposition point of any planet. And that's how midpoint structures, the midpoint trees are made. Anyhow, Saturn and Jupiter are about balance, but Uranus and Saturn are about controlled change. And every 43 years, a generation is born who has a Saturn-Uranus conjunction. And this is the generation who is driving a changing force, a changing energy that is built on the old structures and renews only what is necessary. And here, Pallas Athena gets into the midpoint of these two. So there's wise potential in the space-time moment to change what's necessary, Uranus, without chaos, in order to keep whatever is good in the old structure. And just recently, people started to talk, for instance, in England, that they are not going to banish cars, gasoline run cars, only by 35, not by 30. So you could hear some sane voices, so to speak. So this madness that is complete bullshit, believe me, because there's no such thing as man-made climate change. Climate changes. That's the function of climate. It always changes. And just because you are not going to use fossil fuels, you're not going to save the planet. It's bullshit. This is just a technology shift. And the ones who want this technology shift because they have invested a lot of money, they are pushing this agenda. And they're started to become sane voices. So although the Mars-Pluto square is always very violent, and there's always very disruptive energies during these days, we do have some sane energy coming in as well. So it's it's not so as dark and gloomy as it looked in the first place. And I wish you a lot of strength and a lot of power to exercise your will in the proper way. But be careful, because this is a violent aspect. Okay, don't engage into rage road and all kinds of other stuff. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.